It is Wednesday, April 4th, 2018. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And so, it was a very productive get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday, and yes, I most certainly did get my ass kicked. It was one of those days that kind of reminds you, no matter how good you think you may be, somebody is better. Now, there's this guy, Jordan, very, very slick, and it's kind of funny to me only because he's a very large guy, but he moves very, very stealthily. And even as big as he is, he gets you in some really interesting shit. And so it's like, I always got to watch myself when I'm rolling with him because he's always got a trick up his sleeve. But like me, he's a little bit of a pressure player, so there is the knowing how to deal with that a little teeny tiny bit that helps out. But nonetheless, it was an educational Wednesday at Jiu-Jitsu. Other than that, there's been some excitement, a little bit of excitement with regard to Verge, as we're coming up on the official announcement of a partnership. And although I do know something about it, I've been sworn to secrecy, so that's all that's going to be. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it myself. But the markets have certainly been acting with a little sense of anticipation. We've been seeing some massive buys and quite a bit of fluctuation around 800-ish. I couldn't say exactly what I expect for the future of that. I got fucking orders all over the place when it comes to Verge, and at any one time, because it's a very dynamic coin, and although the adoption curve for it, I would say, is probably one of the most organic in the cryptocurrency space, we don't tend to lose too much ground. It's like when you look at where we were at the beginning and where we are now, whatever failures or setbacks we had previously, we recovered from them, but it was because we weren't built on gaslit bullshit to begin with. It's been very, very upfront as far as what the coin is, what it's designed to do, and what it's meant for. There really hasn't been a lot of confusion there, and it makes me laugh when I see people talking shit about it, because it's like, do you have any idea what fucking coin you're talking about? Look at how long the chart is. It's longer than fucking Ethereum. So, get off my chalk about, it's a pump and dump, it's exit scam. Oh, give me a fucking break. Yeah, it's a 4-year exit scam. Give me a fucking break, dude. Or 5-year exit scam. We're not even near the completion of it yet. Give me a fucking break. It's a coin, it's a currency, and it's meant for privacy. And personally, that is in line with my own personal ideals. When it comes to currency and money and all that, your business is nobody else's business. It's your business. Now, if you want to make your business somebody else's business, that's optional. And that's the way we like it. Anywho, I do have plenty of tabs open in a browser, so we are not empty-handed. We are at least mildly prepared. Although I gotta say that nothing really prepares you for Jordan. That dude is kind of a phenomenon on the mat, and just seeing where he's progressed from when I started. I think that if he ever gets into competitions, people better look the fuck out. That guy get you. Anyway, I want to go ahead and throw down into some music, and let's see, what should we put in? There's always a temptation to go straight for Anthrax because it's tasteful metal. Every single song, tasteful metal. But, you know, I think I get kind of bored of just playing just Anthrax right off the bat. And I got some infectious grooves going on in the background, but that's not where I'm feeling it. Oh, I think maybe a little bit of Helmet. We've tried on Diet Aftertaste, and I do like that song. Let's go with Like I Care. First Dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Fear Factory with Shock. And as promised, we do have plenty on the old browser as far as what exactly we are going to be talking about today. Although I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about this recent conference. I don't know if you guys have caught up on that yet, but apparently there was kind of a debate, and I can't remember the name of the event itself, but apparently Samson Mao and Roger Ver were on the stage, and both using their talking points to date, anyway, with regard to the quote-unquote scaling debate on Bitcoin, and Samson just got like pwned. I felt it's hard to really quantify it at this point, only because, you know, it's like Lightning is something new, okay, and given where it's at in its development cycle, you know, where it's basically still kind of in testing. I think it's too soon to state exactly, you know, what Lightning is going to morph into in 2 years or whatever. It's just not fair to make that assessment at this point as a statement of truth, although I have been doing it. And I kind of regret that to some extent, you know, because I do like the idea of giving everybody their due. You know, I think that we have that capability in cryptocurrencies. However, with regard to Bitcoin itself, when it comes to this kind of change in the way that the coin operates, I think that it's better left to altcoins to explore and ferret out. You know, I don't think Bitcoin is the suitable test venture for it all, where, you know, we could just let anyone, or I don't know. I think that's the conflict there of freedom. You know, that because we are free to make certain changes, the temptation to rely on previous models or previous modalities of thinking is ever present. You know, and I think that's the big problem. It's not really so much innovation, it's the tendency to draw back into, after we've explored into innovation, to draw back into the same crippling hierarchy systems that we tried to escape with the new system. And I think that's a danger that will exist within cryptocurrencies for a little while at least, until people get on to the real focus of cryptocurrencies, which is transacting monetary value between one another without anybody else's permission. That's what they're for. You know, and we can jerk ourselves off with what other kind of utility the blockchain itself could be utilized for, and what the process of transaction can be used for, and the types of transactions, and, you know, the sequencing of the transaction, who gets paid, and all that other shit. We can jerk ourselves off about all that stuff all day long. But what's really needed is goods and services made available for cryptocurrencies to be used as money. And that's about it. You know, people talk about adoption and all. Whatever. Adoption is using these cryptocurrencies as money. If you're not using them as money, then you have not adopted them as currency. And I think that's the interesting point, is that because that term is kind of non-specific, we can assign all kinds of meanings to it, all kinds of associations to it. You know, I mean, when people talk about mass adoption of a coin, I think that it's self-explanatory. You know, that when you look at a coin in retrospect and you're seeing that there are 2 billion users, well, that's a pretty mass adoption. It's not necessarily a goal. It's just a result of being worthy of being circulated as a coin, as a currency. If people do not trust you to use and hold their monetary value in your coin, then it's not really worth anything. You know, and I can see here that I'm having some sort of issue on the program that I'm broadcasting from. So I'm going to close the program, and then I'm going to reset up my broadcast. And it's just going to take a moment or two, but we'll get reconnected and all that will be resolved. And so hopefully we are now broadcasting again. And it looks as though we are. Sorry about the minor delay there. But as I was saying, what makes coins worth it is you. And I saw this on my Twitter today. Somebody had posted it was part of a quote, and I retweeted just a hashtag of "We are the markets." You know, and that's kind of it. That was part of their statement anyway. That's the truth of it. And I got this thing in front of me here. It's a PDF, and it's on let's see, cl.cam.ac.uk. Anyway, it's some sort of paper or another, and I can't remember exactly where I got the link. Let me see here. I got it from a story. And I'm trying to find exactly which one it was, because, of course, I've got like eight or 9 tabs open. Here it is. Yeah. So this guy wrote a review of this paper, Making Bitcoin Legal, and it's on Steemit. The author was Remlaps, Remlaps. So if you'd like to look it up and read his review of it, you may. But we are not going to. Although it would give us some additional context. And you know what? We might just do that. Because my only hesitation in doing that is, this is about 3, maybe 4 pages, about 3 pages, and I'm afraid that it's going to be like 60% quotations from the paper that we're about to read. So, fuck it, we'll do it anyway. This is a review. It's on Steemit. Remlaps is the author, and he authored this 4 days ago. And we won't read the synopsis, we'll just read from the introduction. Introduction. This week, renowned computer security expert... What's going on with music? I like having music going on in the background, and that's where my connection kind of lapsed last time, was the music shut down on me. Anyway, continuing on. This week, renowned computer security expert Bruce Schneier, Schneer, linked from his own blog post tracing stolen Bitcoin to an interesting paper. The paper is Making Bitcoin Legal by Ross Anderson, Ilya Shimalov, and Mansour Ahmed from Cambridge University Computer Laboratory. He also links to Ross Anderson's blog post with the same title as Schneer's. That in turn links to this YouTube video that we are not going to listen to right now. In the paper, blog post, and video, the authors describe the current state of the art on tracing stolen Bitcoin, describe some problems with existing methods, and they propose a new method based on 19th century English law that looks to be a substantial improvement over existing techniques. They also announced the upcoming release of open source software that will implement their proposal. In the following sections of this blog post, I will discuss the state of the art as conveyed in the paper. I will then move on to describing the author's proposal, and finally, I will imagine how the same concept could be applied to the Steam ecosystem. Oh, wow. This is going to be a bonus. Section 1. The state of the art. According to these authors, the state of the art on tracing stolen Bitcoin taint tracking is to use either poison or haircut. With poison, the algorithm follows the tainted coins and adds, quote, taint to transactions in which they are used. Thus, if 3 tainted Bitcoins are used in a transaction with 7, quote, clean ones, the tainted ones are considered to poison the whole batch, and all 10 become tainted. An obvious problem with this would seem to be that the number of tainted coins is constantly expanding, even if the number of thefts is not. In contrast with haircut, a transaction involving 3 tainted Bitcoins and 7 clean ones smears the taint around and results in 10 Bitcoins which are 30% tainted. This doesn't suffer from the same defect as poison, but it has the problem that the taint gets distributed widely very quickly. The authors found an 1816 precedent from English law, quote, Clayton's case, where a judge had to solve the problem of sorting out good and bad transactions after a bank failure. The judge ruled that the transactions had to be dealt with in a, quote, first in, first out ordering. FIFO is something that computer scientists are very familiar with, so the authors decided to apply the algorithm to Bitcoin and see what happened. The really interesting thing is that the authors found that the FIFO algorithm offered much more precision for taint tracking. For example, the 2012 theft of 46,653 Bitcoin from Linode tainted 2,694,051 addresses, or almost 5% of the total, using the haircut algorithm, while with FIFO it's 371,544, or just over 0.67%. And overall, most Bitcoin accounts have zero taint using FIFO, while less than 24% escape taint if we use a haircut approach. According to the paper, this tracking method is even resistant to attempts at anonymization via coin mixing. What this all shows is that tracking stolen Bitcoin actually is feasible, at least in principle. This, in turn, could have sweeping legal implications, which I suggest that you should read in the paper. For my purposes here, it means that the victim of a Bitcoin theft could now track their Bitcoin to a regulated entity, such as an exchange, and hold that party liable in court for trafficking in stolen Bitcoin. That's not going to happen. The authors go on to introduce the concept of a taintchain, their open source software that publicly lists the tainted coins on the Bitcoin blockchain. They further note that due to the wide variety of jurisdictions, it would actually be necessary to maintain numerous taintchain instances, each implementing the rules of a particular country or jurisdiction. What I got to wondering is, how could this concept be applied to Steam? Number 3. Applying taintchain logic to Steam. When I signed up for Steam, I linked from my Facebook account to my Steam introduction post. This validated me as the owner of my account. This validation demonstrates that pretty much all of my current holdings are untainted. What if I went on a 6-month hiatus and someone, say Bad Guy 666, managed to power everything down and send it to himself? After 6 months, it would be too late for me to recover my keys, but if the FIFO taint tracking method were adopted, I'd still be able to use the legal system to track down and recover my missing Steam. To take a simplistic example, suppose that Bad Guy 666 has 100 untainted Steam in his wallet. When he receives my 10 stolen Steam under this convention, for the first 100 Steam that he spends after receiving my tainted Steam, his transactions are considered clean. For the next 10 Steam, however, all transactions are using tainted Steam. According to Anderson et al., it is a long-standing principle of law that, quote, nobody can give what isn't theirs. And that's Nemo.quod non-habet. So under this convention, those tainted transactions would be considered to be illegitimate. Eventually, when tokens reach an exchange, I would be able to sue to get my 10 Steam returned to me. Sorry, block trades. Of course, this would mean that exchanges would stop accepting tainted coins, which would also mean that everyone would need to keep track of taint in order to avoid being left as a bag holder with a wallet full of unspendable Steam. A really interesting part of this is that it can even be applied retroactively to funds that were stolen some time ago. Conclusion. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure how much I like this capability. The ability to recover stolen Bitcoin would be nice, but it comes at the cost that neither Bitcoin nor Steam nor any other blockchain where this is possible is fungible, and I'm sure that I haven't thought through anywhere near all of the implications. Regardless, it's now too late to put the genie back in the lamp, so people are going to have to figure out how to harness the good aspects and minimize the bad ones. I will close by quoting the closing paragraph from Anderson et al. In short, we might be able to turn a rather dangerous system into a much safer one, simply by taking some information that is already public, the blockchain, and publishing it in a more accessible format, the Taintchain. Is that not remarkable? It's an interesting idea. But I can see some issues with it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air about it. I think maybe as a utility that individuals could use, maybe some sort of freeware like add-on to their wallet or something like that, that would at least document the chain or do some taint referent back to the blockchain during a transaction. I don't know how you would arrange that, but I can see some possibility for legal liability. However, let's get something straight here. We're talking about a taint chain, right? This taint chain is going to be tracking taint associated with your transactions, ID, various other elements of the transaction, possibly what was bought, where it was bought, so on and so forth, right? But now let's go a little bit further, because we've made much to do about this on this show, that if applied, this kind of technology, or this kind of tracking rather, would make it possible to track everybody's transactions in this way. Now think about that implication. And I want to really congratulate the author on this, because this guy says straight out, man, I don't even know what I don't know. And I try to say that on this show, that, I could be wrong. I don't even know what I don't know. But to that point, though, just talking about the Taintchain here. So, Donald Trump buys something with Bitcoin. Now, all of a sudden, the taint, whatever taint there is available to be tracked in association with this transaction concerning the vendor that he was transacting with, what exactly was purchased, when it was purchased, how much he paid, both in Bitcoin and its US dollar equivalent at that moment. Everybody's transactions would be tracked in this way. No more hide, no more I can get away with having proxies do things for me. No. The taint is there. It's going to be tracked. You have to operate with that assumption. It's like when I think about tending stuff for other people, I don't even think about using the same hardware that I use, because there's taint associated with just the hardware itself. Now, how much of that actually goes out to the transaction hash, I couldn't tell you. Probably not anything. But like I said, the concern should be that this isn't something for just one person. Okay, there might only be a few entities that are actually interested in tracking this information, but the point being that they would be able to track the information of everybody using that currency, whatever currency they were monitoring, if not all currencies. I don't know how much of their principles, I don't know, but we got their white paper here, and we are going to find out at least a little bit more about what they're talking about here. But personally, like I'm saying, I think the question should be like, okay, are we going to be equally liable? Like if I do something like, I buy some fucking shrooms that only grow in Madagascar, okay, and I get them fucking UPS to me or some shit like that, and I pay in Bitcoin, and there is taint associated with this transaction, right? And it's going to be trackable retroactively. They're going to be able to tell exactly which coins I used and when I bought them and how much I paid and all that other shit, right? But say the reason I knew about this source in Madagascar for these shrooms was Trump's kid. And it was because Trump's kid also bought from the same source and also used Bitcoin. That means the transaction that Trump's kid did is just as trackable as mine. Has just as much taint associated as mine does. So now if you're going to prosecute me, are you also going to prosecute him? You have the same evidence. You can tell exactly how much he bought, how much he paid in Bitcoin, when he bought it, where he got it delivered. You can recover all of that taint. If you can track the transaction at all, you can find all of that taint. So now again, are you going to apply the same measures in prosecuting people using that proof for everybody? Because if you are, sure, let's bring it on. We're going to find out really quick that a lot of people in office and whatnot, do things with cryptocurrencies that they really would rather nobody know about. And hats off to them for doing that. But the point being is they would be just as open to prosecution if this were to be used as a means of prosecution as everybody else. And so, yeah, you know what? The genie might be out of the bottle, but don't trust the genie to be all that selective about how he waves the old ban hammer. Anyway, we got this document here, and it's 13 pages. And we are going to digest all of it on this show. We certainly do have the time. And I think I'll do it prior to a music break. Because, yeah, let's see here. I'm getting down toward the end of it here. And it looks like, yeah, the last half of page 12 is just acknowledgments and shit. So it looks like 11 and a half pages. It's pretty big font. I think we can do it. We'll do this before a music break and go on from there. Anyway, this is Making Bitcoin Legal. And this is by Ross Anderson, Ilya Shmailov? My apologies. And Mansour Ahmed, Cambridge University Computer Laboratory. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. Yogi Berra. Abstract. What would happen if the existing laws were actually enforced on the rich and powerful? Social reformers often clamor for new rules but ignore the huge changes that might happen if our existing rules were applied equally to all. And in the brave new world of ICOs and 1000% cryptocurrency inflation, the rich and powerful are the Bitcoin exchanges. What would happen if FinCEN regulations and laws against money laundering were applied to them and extended by sensible case law? We argue that this could mitigate most of the worst excesses of the cryptocurrency world and turn a dangerous system into a much safer one. The curious thing about this change is that it would not involve changing the protocol. It would not even necessarily involve changing the law. It might be enough to take some information that is already public, publishing it again in a more easily understood format. Introduction. Bitcoin set out to provide a working online currency outside of the control of governments, and has developed from a cypherpunk toy through a way to buy drugs online to a means of getting flight capital out of countries with exchange controls to an investment product quoted on major exchanges. It has been criticized for wasting a lot of electricity, for being a classic investment bubble, for providing no consumer protection to its users, and for facilitating crimes, from old crimes such as drug dealing to new ones such as ransomware. The purpose of this paper is twofold. First, we discuss how the law might actually regulate Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies so as to provide the benefits ranging from low-cost international money transfers and decentralized resilient operation to competitive innovation, while mitigating the harms, specifically the use of cryptocurrencies in extortion, money laundering, and other crimes, and the difficulty that crime victims experience in getting redress. We show that where the relevant case law is used as a basis, it becomes much easier to track stolen bitcoins than previously thought. Second, we use this discussion to illustrate that the characteristics of a payment protocol can depend much more sensitively than one might expect on the surrounding context. This may be of scientific interest to the protocol community and also of practical interest to regulators. Payment systems suffer from strong network effects, and it may be harder than it seems to sustain a government-backed good coin in competition with established systems such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. It is therefore important to explore the practical options for taming the systems that already exist. On the policy front, we have repeatedly seen a pattern whereby the promoter of an online platform claims that old laws will not apply. The internet was supposed to interpret censorship and route around it, yet child sex abuse images are banned almost everywhere. Napster set out to free all music from the surly bonds of copyright. It was closed down. Uber was going to create a single taxi firm that worked worldwide from a convenient app, regardless of the local legacy monopolies. Yet when legacy taxi drivers complained about their new competitors working 16 hours a day and passenger safety issues piled up, Uber was banned in one city after another. Yet such innovations often make a real difference once a new legal equilibrium is achieved. The music company mafias have yielded to Spotify and YouTube, which make most music available to anyone who will listen to occasional ads. Competition from Uber has cut Cambridge taxi fares by over 20%, and the internet has made many more good things available to all. The key is making online challengers obey the law, and the laws may not need to change much or even at all. Fixing new problems using existing laws is usually preferable, given the difficulty of getting primary legislation passed. So where does this leave Bitcoin? In this paper, we assume the reader is familiar with the mechanics of Bitcoin and of blockchains in general. A later paper will present more detail for readers interested in law or policy. 2. Ideal regulation. The obvious first step towards regulation was to bring Bitcoin exchanges within the financial system by applying anti-money laundering regulations to them. Thus, anyone wishing to exchange Bitcoin for cash or for Ether or any other means of payment has to satisfy Know Your Customer rules, just as if they were opening a bank account, typically by showing government-issued photo ID plus 2 utility bills as proof of address. Sorry about that, need a little hydration. When the financial... This started in 2013 when the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, directed Bitcoin exchanges to register as money service businesses. 3. Most countries have now followed suit, partitioning the world of exchanges into compliant and rogue components. The second step would be for both enforcement agencies and exchanges to have effective means of tracking tainted coins. If my Bitcoin wallet is stolen, I can now go to the police and report it. These stolen assets are completely traceable through the blockchain, and whenever anybody tries to bank them at an exchange, they can be seized. How might the courts actually do that? 2.1. Clayton's case. Until now, there were two algorithms used for taint tracking in the blockchain Poison and Haircut. Those taint multi-source transactions, of which one input is tainted, either completely or in portion. Thus, a transaction whose inputs are 3 stolen Bitcoin and then 7 good Bitcoin has an output of on Poison of 10 stolen Bitcoin, and on Haircut of 10 Bitcoin, each of which is marked as 30% stolen. However, this ignores the precedent of Clayton's case, where a court in 1816 had to tackle the problem of mixing good and bad funds through an account after a bank went bust, and the outcome depended on which deposits to an account were to be matched with later withdrawals. The master of the rolls sent a simple rule of first in, first out withdrawals from an account are deemed to be drawn against the deposits first made to it. In order to test this rule, we coded FIFO and Haircut taint tracking and ran them from the Genesis block to 2016, starting from 132 well-publicized Bitcoin crimes. FIFO turns out to be very much more precise. The 2012 theft of 46,653 Bitcoin from Linode tainted 2,694,051 addresses, or almost 5% of the total, using the Haircut algorithm, while with FIFO it's 371,544, or just over 0.67%. The effect is even more pronounced with a shorter propagation period. For example, the 2014 Flexcoin hack, where the, quote, the world's first Bitcoin bank closed after all their coins were stolen, tainted only 18,208 accounts by 2016 using FIFO, but 1,429,794 using Haircut. Overall, most Bitcoin accounts have zero taint using FIFO, while less than 24% escape taint if we use a Haircut approach. This is a very striking result. Many people assumed that Bitcoin tracking was usually impractical because the taint spreads widely as coins circulate. However, once we apply the law and use FIFO, tracking turns out to be much more practical. And FIFO tracking is reversible. You can track forwards from a coin that's been reported stolen, or backwards from a coin you've just been offered. This is impossible with Haircut tainting, as it loses information. We also looked at Bitcoin laundries or mixers. These are based on the idea that if you put one black coin in a bag with 9 white ones and shake hard enough, you'll get 10 white ones out. But depending on the algorithm in use, FIFO tainting will decide that one of the outputs is black, and no owner of a white coin will want to risk that outcome, or that all coins are a sandwich of black and white components, which is also an undesirable outcome. In any case, mixers have never had the scale, throughput, or latency to cope with the proceeds of serious crime. The Bitcoin stolen from Mt. Gox were traced to BTC-E, which was raided and its operator arrested. There is an interesting piece of research to be done here on protocols, documenting the precise effects of FIFO tainting on the various mixing and money laundering strategies proposed to date or documented in the wild. People who have been doing research on financial anonymity without paying attention to Clayton's case have simply been using the wrong metric. Efficient coin tracing may damage the fungibility of Bitcoin. A commodity is called fungible if one unit can replace another. Examples are gold coins and ears of corn. Technology has in the past reduced fungibility. If 10 sheep wandered in Roman times from Marcus's field into Pliny's, then the court would let Marcus take any 10 of Pliny's sheep. But today, all sheep have electronic tags, so Marcus can get the right sheep back. So too with Bitcoin. 2.2. Nem dat quod non habet. Nobody can give what isn't theirs, is a fundamental principle of law in England, with variants in many other jurisdictions. You cannot get effective title to stolen goods simply by buying them. Indeed, you can be prosecuted for receiving them. If Alice steals Bob's horse and sells it to Charlie, Charlie doesn't own it. Whenever Bob sees him riding it, he can demand it back. There are a few exemptions. For centuries, if stolen goods were sold at a market overt, a designated public market, between sunrise and sunset, then the buyer would get good title. So if Charlie had bought Bob's horse in Cambridge Market, all Bob could now do would be to sue her for the value, or perhaps her transported to the colonies. This rule was abolished in the UK in 1995 following abuse by antique thieves, but it survives in specific forms in some markets to which the idea had spread in the meantime. The relevant case for our purposes is money, where goods started to function as money as with gold. Regulation developed to accommodate it. Banks started in some countries as goldsmiths who would give receipts for gold and on demand would give an appropriate amount of gold back, though not necessarily the same bars. So a gold thief might lodge his loot at a goldsmith and take the receipt back a week later to get clean bars instead. Fast forward through a lot of history, and you now get good title to stolen money in two main cases. Number one, you got the money in good faith for value. For example, you bought a microwave oven at a high street store and got a 10 lira note in your change. That note is now yours, even if it was stolen in a bank robbery last year. Number two, you got the money from a regulated institution, such as from an ATM. Then, even if it was stolen in a robbery last year, that's now the bank's problem, not yours. It is not surprising that the cryptocurrency industry would very much like to have bitcoins declared to be money, as this would enable everyday users to stop worrying about the possibility that some of their bitcoin were stolen. And this is a real fear. the major reported robberies alone account for about 6 to 9% of all Bitcoins in circulation. If we add the proceeds of crime more generally, we will get a much larger figure, but will encounter many complexities of definition, jurisdiction, and so on. The proceeds of drug crimes in particular are exposed to quite draconian seizure laws in a number of countries. However, nothing in life is free, and being a regulated financial institution has significant costs of its own. Capital adequacy requirements, criminal record background checks for staff, and, most important for our purposes, know your customer rules feeding into anti-money laundering surveillance systems. Large transactions are reported, as are patterns of smaller ones, and banks demand your passport and a couple of utility bills when you open an account. Since 2013, the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, has directed Bitcoin exchanges to register and follow those rules. Other countries have been following suit. Since 2017, several non-compliant exchanges have been prosecuted. The latest development is that the EU proposes to amend the fourth anti-money laundering directive so as to extend regulation, including a KYC duty, to firms that operate hosted wallet services. The question then will be how the regulators will discharge the responsibility they have now assumed. Might they do something to reassure ordinary investors that they won't lose money as a result of buying stolen Bitcoin? Of course, they could demand that registered exchanges make good any customers to whom they sell Bitcoin that later turn out to be stolen. But is there anything else? 2.3. Registering or even insuring title. One way of ensuring title would be for the state to register ownership, as it does in many countries with real estate, motor vehicles, and patents. But there are subtleties here about whether or not the register is constitutive of ownership, as with patients or not, as with cars, and whether it provides a guarantee, as with property. But given the scale of Bitcoin thefts and robberies and the anonymity preferences of Bitcoin users, state guarantees are unlikely to be an attractive option for many stakeholders. A government-controlled blockchain would give neither the platform for innovation that cryptocurrencies do, nor price, performance, and market responsiveness of ordinary bank accounts. 2.4. Might the courts do the job? So far, no government has declared Bitcoin to be money, although Japan and Italy have tiptoed around the edges of this. However, courts may find that Bitcoin can be treated as money for some purposes. A relevant precedent established that carbon credits are property, and they possess many of the same characteristics of Bitcoins as Bitcoins. My apologies, sir. Monetary status might be thought ideal for investors who hold cryptocurrencies in the hope of capital gains. At present, the investor can only check that her asset has not yet been reported as crime proceeds. But most crime reports don't come with public lists of affected addresses. If Bitcoin were money and she got her Bitcoin directly from a regulated exchange, she would have good title. If someone hacks your Bitcoin wallet or uses ransomware to extort Bitcoin from you, or holds you up at gunpoint and forces you to transfer your savings to them, a crime that's become extremely fashionable of late, then the stolen Bitcoins can be traced. Now that coin tracing is practical, the victim can trace the stolen Bitcoin through the blockchain and sue the current holder or any regulated exchange through which it passed. I don't know about that. Pardon me there. So, honest customers would like the exchange's addresses to be public, so that anyone tracing stolen funds could see that a coin went through a regulated exchange before they bought it. The exchanges will resist, not wanting to make it easier for theft victims to sue them. Bitcoin enthusiasts might well side with the exchanges on the principle that Bitcoin public keys are pseudonymous. But it's increasingly the investors who are floating the boat. 3. Changing the rules of the game. This pressure point may give an opportunity to change the rules of the game. Fox notes, quote, information about the tainted provenance of individual cyber coins may be discoverable by specialized forensic techniques, but there is as yet no standard practice of applying them to routine payments. We have shown that coin provenance can be tracked very much more easily than people assumed. The economic pressure point sits on a technical fissure between the technical community's insistence that the only concept of ownership of Bitcoin is control of the private key for the wallet which it's stored, in which it's stored, versus the lawyer's insistence that the registration of a Bitcoin on the blockchain is not constitutive of ownership, as is the case with registered public property rights such as patents. I don't give a fuck what the goddamn lawyers say. If I have the coins, if I have the private keys, they're my coins. Fuck you. Go die. Anyway, continuing on. Cryptocurrency promoters and investors will continue to lobby for a law making Bitcoin fungible, arguing that governments make money from selling Bitcoin confiscated as the proceeds of a crime. Even if in the past they have ineptly sold Bitcoin at way below market value, they will also point out that when the government of Korea tried to crack down on cryptocurrencies, it suffered a public backlash. But even if Bitcoin becomes money, the law and the blockchain will still diverge when you buy a Bitcoin knowing it to be stolen, or being on notice that it might be, or being negligent that it might be. For Bitcoin to work as some of its promoters wish, governments would have to go further than declaring it to be money. They would have to declare the blockchain to be constitutive of ownership. This would be an extreme measure and seems unlikely given that the registers of motor vehicles don't have such a status. The register simply records where the speeding fines and unpaid tolls should be sent. It does not establish ownership. If we want to make ownership of Bitcoin more certain, we need a different approach. 4. Taintchain, a public trail of breadcrumbs. As Fox noted, tainted provenance can be discovered using forensics, yet applying these to routine payments is not standard practice. Our critical new assumption is this. Suppose there exists free and open source software that makes an up-to-date taint analysis publicly available. This will follow the blockchain forward from all reported crimes, and also from crimes whose existence can be reliably deduced from an internal evidence of the blockchain. From the internal evidence of the blockchain, and will mark every Bitcoin in existence with a taint. Either the coin is clean, or some part of it was stolen. In that case, the taint will document the chain of evidence back to the crime and quantify it under certain assumptions, which we will discuss later. We call this public trace the Taintchain and propose to make our FIFO tracking software public so that anyone can build one. There may well be multiple versions. For example, if a Chinese national uses Bitcoin to extract money from China in contravention of its exchange control laws, that will not be a crime in the UK, which has no exchange controls. Similarly, if a software company in Estonia pays a developer in the Ukraine in Bitcoin so she can evade both exchange controls and tax, the authorities in Tallinn may well not be interested. Different legislatures take different views of right and wrong. Different taintchains are the inevitable result. The machinery of international law, MLATs, dual criminality checks for extradition warrants, evidence rules, may eventually find its expression in protocols and in-chain analysis code. Let us ignore issues of jurisdiction for the time being and consider two possible ways forward. First, what might happen under optimal but light touch regulation? And second, what might private law get us there instead? In other words, if the victims of Bitcoin crime were to sue to get their assets back, then might decisions in the courts get us to roughly the same place? 4.1 Protocol research problems. Suppose the government simply declares that people who purchase Bitcoin in good faith from regulated exchanges following established AML and KYC rules will get good title, and that exchanges must refund theft victims. Thus, when someone pays a Bitcoin amount, of which, say, 8.4% has been reported stolen, the exchange will seize that portion of the deposited amount and apply due process to return either the actual coins or their value to the rightful owners. You know what? I want to pause on this point under 4.1 for just 1 second here. I was thinking about this. There have been instances where we've seen issues that have been created with Bitcoin and with the blockchain, such as the inhibition of the propagation of variants of Bitcoin that had bigger blocks by certain entities, certain faceless entities that just, petitioned for or fired up their own nodes to ensure that those nodes that were trying to propagate the bigger blocks were inhibited from doing so. And so I was just thinking about this. If at any time the duress that the rest of the exchange, the rest of the Bitcoin using community experienced during that time, where they were paying fees between $20 and $40, regardless of the size of the transaction. I'm starting to wonder if there would be some sort of, legal redress if somebody bothered to follow this Taintchain business and really use it to maximum efficiency here, or I don't know, I guess, maximum efficacy, really using it to its full advantage to the public, because the public was really materially injured during this period, and in my opinion still continues to be to some extent with the limitation of 1 megabyte blocks, despite the volume of actual transactions occurring every 10 minutes. See, I think that decision to unnecessarily injure Bitcoin users should have some sort of legal ramifications if in fact it can be found that this activity or the state of the Bitcoin network has been, how should I say it, maintained by a limited number of individuals, not necessarily a significant portion of the Bitcoin community. I mean, really, when you're getting ass raped for that, $10, $15 transaction fee, don't you feel like socking somebody? Like, if they followed this Taintchain thing through far enough, you could be determining where the hashing power was coming from, or the location of the nodes that were propagating or inhibiting, propagating DDoS attacks or some such. So there could be some sort of legal recourse for malicious activity by actors on public networks. Something to contemplate there. Continuing on. There are many technical protocol aspects to explore. Can we support protocols that will let an exchange customer check whether a Bitcoin payment will be accepted or whether some of it will be confiscated as crime proceeds? If an identified customer says, "Hi, what will you give me for UTXO X?" and the exchange replies, "Sorry, 22% of that was stolen in a robbery just last Tuesday, so we'll only give you 78%. Does the customer then have to turn over the crime proceeds? We'd presume so. The exchange has her passport and utility files on bill after all. If someone invented a protocol to check value in zero knowledge, they might be prosecuted for obstruction of justice. Even if not, the exchanges would be as leery of that as the credit card companies are at present of small transactions which might be used by thieves to check whether a card's been reported stolen yet. In fact, the difficulty of doing pre-purchase coin checking is a strong argument for a public taintchain, and there are issues familiar to the protocol community of revocation and freshness. Suppose Alice checks a UTXO against the Taintchain, sees that it's okay, and then transfers it to an exchange in good faith in order to cash it for dollars. Meanwhile, the victim of a Bitcoin robbery reports some of it stolen, and by the time Alice's transaction is mined into the blockchain, it's tainted. Or perhaps the miners refuse to touch it as they don't want the tainted mining fees. How do you sort out the mess? What combination of technical measures, social norms, and legal rules might put us in a sweet spot? Presumably the exchanges will have to pick up some of the tab, as banks do at present, but what rules might work and what protocols might support them? And I wanted to take a little break off of that just to say that I've been thinking also about the Mt. Gox thing. It's been it's been my assertion that with all of the big exchange hacks, that if you dig deep down enough in through the taint, what you're going to find is that the people that did it were either A, inside individuals, okay, they just could not get over the temptation and gave in to their own greed, which is possible, or we'll find that they are outside actors acting as proxies for either government or corporate interests. And this is coming back down to where I was talking about before, where if you find that out through chasing the taint of quote-unquote stolen coins, what the fuck do you do about that? Are you going to prosecute the hacker that worked for J.P. Morgan Chase and the criminal association of J.P. Morgan Chase who hired them to do this specific hack and extract those funds and then disperse them out into the network and make money off of that? Are you going to prosecute everybody that was involved with that crime, or just the hacker that facilitated the transfer? I mean, I think this is the big thing here. You know, if you're gonna bust some kid in some rural town in Idaho who bought some psychedelics on the Silk Road, if you're gonna bust him using this taint, I want you to be busting Goldman Sachs for hiring a fucking hacker to hack into an exchange and steal all their hot wallet funds. But, here again, it comes up to the application of the law. If you're going to apply existing laws to cryptocurrencies, you better do it evenly. Because the disparity of justice will be completely obvious to everybody using these coins. This Taintchain business will be available to everybody to examine. So the standard of guilt, I think, and what exactly constitutes a crime, these things are going to be needing to be having the review done, not, custodial business and all that other shit. We're going to be having to re-examine our legal system for exactly what constitutes criminal activity. And that's going to be the point I think that will ultimately break, because the market always wins. I don't care what exactly we're talking about. The market always wins, and we being the market with regard to cryptocurrencies, we're always going to win. The very idea of a taintchain in association with a cryptocurrency, it creates a motivation or an incentive then to have a coin that doesn't have the equal volume of taint associated with the transactions. And this increases the use of them because it's incentivized now. And you're going to facilitate more of the criminal activity via that means than you were originally intending to create. This is money, kids. We're not talking about Pokemon cards or whatnot. We're talking about money, and people have a vested individual interest in being able to use it as they wish. And so I think the availability of that incentive to be determined by people like you and me, that alters the concept of what it is to be a money maker. I said it before during Janet Yellen's reign of the Federal Reserve that I am Janet Yellen because I could author a cryptocurrency, I could deploy it, people could mine it, people could exchange goods and services for it. That puts me on par with Janet Yellen. And so again, when you start trying to shape your legislation around a particular paradigm of activity, you're going to find out really quick, and we will with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, that people who are intent on avoiding your means of tracking will simply use the means that you're completely unaware of to track their taint. If they're aware that you're tracking their taint on the Ethereum blockchain and the Bitcoin blockchain and Litecoin blockchain, they're just not going to use those coins. They're going to use something else to transact their monetary value, and there again, it will be completely out of your capability to monitor. Or, worse yet, they'll examine how exactly you're able to gather the taint, and they will modify a different variant of the same coin and release that. And you'll be back to the fucking global whack-a-mole all over again. And the idea of making certain coins or certain class of coins illegal and using the taint to vigorously prosecute users of them, you're invariably going to get some governor's kid, some president's kid, some president's sister, auntie, uncle, grandma. And you're going to be talking about trying to prosecute them. And they're going to be coming to you going, hey, you know, why are you trying to bust my grandma? And you're going to say, oh, well, you know, we're going to try to apply this thing and we're going to use her as an example. And they're going to be like, the fuck you are? You're going to find you in a dumpster somewhere. Every single government that has said something about regulating cryptocurrencies beyond the interface between cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies, they only get so far and they take that step back. And as I said, it's because we are all sinners here. And some of us have you know, come to the realization of that fact and exercised as such, and some of us haven't. But the grouping of people that have is not exclusive to some socioeconomic class or some color or some nationality or some age group, some gender, some sexual orientation. No. We're all sinners. We're all guilty. And, you know, bearing these standards for guilt, we are all guilty. And so again, do you really want to live in that world? Because it's available. You could be living in it. It'll be a fucking nightmare, but it'll be a nightmare for everybody. Anyway, let's digest the rest of this thing. We only got about 1.5 more pages, or about 2 pages left. Here we go. This is actually an old problem. Under the common law statute of limitations, I can sue for negligence for up to 7 years, and there is no limit in England for return of stolen goods. Under the old system for check clearing, I might be able to claw back funds for a few days to weeks. Under the EU Payment Services Directive, payments become irrevocable after 48 hours, and customer complaints must be made within 13 months. The disparity of rules indicates a role for lawgiver in clarifying grace periods for cryptocurrencies. Clearly, law enforcement will lobby for a long period, while the exchanges will lobby for a short one. Further rules need to be explored. Further rules need to be explored. Where we can identify clearly conspiratorial behavior, such as a mix, the whole of the output may be strongly considered tainted, at least in the case of Bitcoin being money, where the requirement for good title is to transact in good faith. Curiously, making cryptocurrencies into money would make anonymity harder, at least insofar as provided by detectable technical mechanisms. Cryptocurrencies such as Monero and Zcash might forever be incapable of being treated as money because of their built-in laundromats. There, a default assumption of bad faith seems prudent. The only demonstration or assumption of bad faith with regard to Monero I have is their obvious lack of desire to monitor the amount of their hashing power that's coming from shadow mining on unwilling victims' computers. But that's about it. Continuing on, 4.2. So what might governments do? Up until now, cryptocurrency promoters have campaigned for monetary status. Not really. Often under the slogan of fungibility, while governments have largely dragged their heels, no doubt fearing that control would be completely lost, and that tracing and recovery of crime proceeds would become even harder. We hope we've shown that it's not that simple. One possible way forward would be the creation of a NEMO-DAT exemption for regulated Bitcoin exchanges, with a suitable notice period and more detailed provisions for the extent to which crime victims might be made good beyond that. We propose that exchanges should also maintain a reserve proportional to their trading activities as banks do, so that they can continue to make victims good even when there are spikes of claims. An alternative approach might be private sector title insurance. Once we have a good public taint coin, a Bitcoin exchange or bank might simply guarantee title to any Bitcoin it sells and publish its wallet addresses so that the tracking can stop and start there. A useful starting point for negotiation between governments and exchange operators, or just for incremental policy development, might be the EU's Second Payment Services Directive, which encapsulates Europe's experience to date in dealing with consumer-facing payment systems. Just as Uber was brought to heel by mayors saying, quote, "We don't care if you claim to be a platform, whatever that is, you're a taxi company, and you'll get a license or we'll run you out of town." So a sound opening gambit would be to start enforcing the law as it stands. For any of this to be feasible, a public taintchain may be the key. En route, there are many interesting protocol problems to tackle. 5. Conclusions. The Bitcoin protocol is fascinating. It has created what appears to be a global trusted computer out of a mixture of cryptography and incentives, despite the facts that many of the actors are shady and many of these circulating crypto coins have been stolen at least once. Out of this swamp, the value of Bitcoin has soared to peaks that few would have predicted 2 years ago. The demand is now largely for investment rather than transactions, so now may be the time to clean up Bitcoin. How can we start? Tracking stolen coins so that crime victims can sue to get their property back is the key. Up to now, people have been using haircut tainting and tracking stolen Bitcoin. We've shown that's wrong as a matter of both law and engineering. The law says you should use FIFO, and when you do so, the engineering works way better. It is much more precise and it is reversible. In addition to tracing forward from a stolen Bitcoin to see where it went, you can trace backwards from any UTXO and get its entire genealogy. In short, FIFO tracking is a powerful new analytic tool. The way is now clear for financial regulators to apply the existing law on stolen property and on payment services to Bitcoin exchanges. The thought experiment in this paper illustrates a deeper fact. A protocol's security properties can depend in very subtle ways on context. There is some precedent for this. For example, the bug in shared secret Needham-Schroeder became apparent once people started to consider insider threats. The contextual change needed for Bitcoin is really just a matter of clarity. The taint information is right there in the blockchain and in the public theft reports, but combining the two so as to work out the taint on even one single UTXO has involved a key conceptual insight, FIFO, and some engineering effort. The output is a public taint chain that makes stolen coins visible to all. then a test case or regulation might create a soft fork between good coins and bad. And as investment demand trumps transaction demand, good coins might drive out bad coins, and miners might also avoid bad ones, as they won't want tainted transaction fees. Honest users of Bitcoin would then buy them from regulated exchanges and pay them in again directly. Bitcoin would still support peer-to-peer payments and would not in any engineering sense be centralized or otherwise changed, but most users would start to use Bitcoin rather like they use other electronic money, which passes from the bank to the customer, to the merchant, and back to the bank. In short, we might be able to turn a rather dangerous system into a much safer one, simply by taking some information that is already public, the blockchain, and publishing it in a more accessible format, the Taintchain. Is that not remarkable? Acknowledgements. We acknowledge helpful discussions with David Fox, Shi Barbano, Tyler Moore, Nicholas Christian, Rainer Bohm, Johann Bezudenhout, Lawrence Eswood, Joe Bonneau, and various attendees at Financial Cryptography 2018, where we presented some of the ideas here at a rump session talk. Nice. So anyway, there you have it, the Taintchain, the butt chain of the blockchain. I can see some utility to it, but again, I can see the dangers of it for some who have behaved badly and outright maliciously in the Bitcoin cryptosphere, or in the cryptosphere in general, to date. And I think one other thing that we could abstract from this is that the true identities of the criminal elements involved in certain crimes could be ascertained, I think, a little bit more clearly. We could be telling when transactions happen and compare those with security logs in places, especially in exchange hacks that we suspect of being at least partially based within the organization itself. You know, so you gotta think about it. You know, it's like if you want to apply this kind of information to criminal investigations and whatnot, you've got to be willing to take on the responsibility of prosecuting all criminal individuals or people acting in a criminal manner with the same standards and be applying the prosecutions equivalently. Because if you don't, it will be part of the public record. You know, it'll be part of that Taintchain. You know, and when it's obvious that you're not playing by the rules, people will lose trust in the coin. So, you know, again, that it's a standard that you may or may not want to apply, because if you do apply it, you are going to find out really quick that judges and cops and all manner of government officials will be closely involved in some sort of criminal activity in one way or another, you know, either via implication or direct participation or relative participation or implication of such. I mean, because we've read the laws here on this show that, you know, talk about the ways that they intend to chase down prosecution. Okay, you start using this as a tool for a prosecutorial tool, you're going to be putting like Jamie Dimon in jail. Because if you don't, again, this will be public record. people will be able to chase it down. And there's no guarantee that they will. There's obviously a hope, but invariably somebody is going to come across the taint of transactions that involved such parties, and their direct association with those criminal activities will be made public. So again, it's going to be a nightmare, but it'll be a nightmare for everybody. And the idea that you're going to escape it is to be saying that you're only going to be trading in like public in like paper cash. You're only going to be doing OTC trades for paper cash. And I mean, there are ways around all of this taint business. You can lie and all that other stuff. There's ways around it, but there's only so much of it that you can disassociate from yourself. And especially places that have some sort of identity registry that you have to like scan some card to get into and whatever, some sort of sensitive information there. That kind of taint would be easily associatable with your coins. Things like CCTV camera records of you entering and exiting a building. This could easily be associated with transactions that occurred on Wi-Fi nodes that were within your proximity in that building. The taint is endless, folks. And so you can get away from it. There are ways around it, but you have to be thinking way ahead. And and even with that, I can see a historical record that, again, there's never been a more accountable form of money invented by man. But it's accountable for everybody, not just me, not just, the bum down the street. No, everybody, including Donald Trump. So, again, you want to start applying this standard to tracking the taint of transactions. You've got to be concerned about what you're going to find out, because if you're not, you're gonna find out stuff that you didn't really want to know, and you're going to reveal stuff that people would rather you didn't know or reveal. Now it's going to fuck some people up. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music, and we're going to be a little bit long on it because that was pretty long. And as far as what to throw in, I've got a lot of The Contortionist, but I don't want to play that right now. Like Broken Glass, Crowbar, here on Coin Metal. And that was Cold Chamber with Loco. Yeah, I love that song. So I do have a few tabs left open. I keep thinking about the Taintchain and how that would equally ensnare criminals as well as legislators. That just again, it would be a nightmare, but it would be a nightmare for everybody. That's all I can say about it. Anyway, I got this article here on CoinDesk, and I really wanted to touch on this one because this is like a kind of one of those underwriting themes in all of my shows, or at least one of the articles we read usually touches on this subject. So here it is. It's on CoinDesk. Motherboard maker ASRock confirms plan to sell crypto miners. ASRock is planning to sell 4 graphics cards GPUs specifically geared for cryptocurrency mining. The company unveiled its Phantom Gaming series last week based on AMD's RX series. an ASRock America employee confirmed to CoinDesk that 4 of the cards, all of which are versions of the RX 570 series, are for, quote, mining only. A 5th RX 570 8GB OC version, the employee added, is the gaming-oriented version of that product. The confirmation comes after a presentation screenshot was posted on Twitter late last month by videocards.com highlighting the planned products. The move signals that ASRock, which released a mining-specific motherboard back in 2013, is looking to capitalize on the demand for GPUs by miners who use the tech in the energy-intensive mining process. The demand has led companies like AMD and NVIDIA to see growing sales, though both firms have said cryptocurrency miners only form a small part of their customer base. Although probably a lot bigger than they would ever admit. According to a report from PC Gamer, which covered last week's reveal, the RX 570 series will run AMD's Radeon software Adrenalin Edition. That's a notable detail because just prior to the announcement, AMD updated the same driver to better handle cryptocurrency mining processes, as CoinDesk previously reported. The confirmation came the same day that Bitmain, the world's largest maker of Bitcoin mining hardware, unveiled a new application-specific integrated circuit dedicated to cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and other ETH-hashed-based coins. The Antminer's E3, which is expected to ship in July, quickly sold out after the China-based company started accepting pre-orders. Well, that just means that the profitability interval for GPUs is getting challenged yet again. Because I have reported on this little tidbit of information that's been floating around for quite a while now. And the best I can tell, it seems the efficiencies and whatnot between GPUs and ASIC miners is starting to come to not quite parity, but getting there. And I really think that we are going to see that transition. As this arms race gets more participants, we are going to see an explosion in efficiency. We were just talking the other day about Intel getting into it. That is so fucking huge. Okay, and on top of that, we're throwing in ASRock, and we've already got NVIDIA and AMD. Who's left? Motorola? Are they even still an entity? I mean, I really see in the horizon that this is going to push the shit out of efficiencies on all hardware. All of it. And they're not going to have a choice. It's going to be innovate or die. And so this big concern that cryptocurrencies are going to ruin the planet or mining is going to ruin the planet, and no. Going to end up saving the planet. That's what's going to end up happening. Because the demand for raw materials, I believe, will reach such a threshold that it will further incentivize and improve the returns on recycling your hardware. And it'll be profitable for some people if they're, close to a large enough grouping of miners to get together, collect all of the materials from those miners and recycle them for them. It would be profitable for them. You know, and I can see in China where that has a lot of possibilities as far as making things a little bit more efficient for them. I mean, because they've already got the production capacity right there. They probably already got the recycling capacity there. So I could see where this would give them, again, a greater advantage over a lot of the market. And, you know, the longer they decide to fuck around with miners and whatnot, trying to get in their way and shit, you know what? You gotta get your foot off of it. Leave it the fuck alone. They're generating so much more economic activity than they would be if they were in a fucking bread line or working on some manufacturing line somewhere for you. That it's undeniable. And just forcing it out of your country isn't going to make it go away. It's just going to make it go somewhere else. And that's not quite the same thing as making it go away. You know, making it go away would mean that it never, the production capacity, the value, whatever, was not replaced by other entities elsewhere, or the same entities elsewhere, in another legal jurisdiction outside of your control. And we're going to continue to see this, and I've said it multiple times now, and I will continue to say it because, I don't know, I think I'm probably the only person saying it, that I really consider this to be the mad quagmire of the 21st century. That you can push on it. You know, you can apply your current stringent controls on cryptocurrencies at certain points. But all you're really doing is disincentivizing the use within your jurisdiction. You're not actually stopping people from using it. You know, it would be worth a lot more if you could. But then you find out that you're already taking advantage of the fact that you can't. You know, I can't wait until one of these guys, one of these pencil heads, decides they want to push it a little bit further and try and get on to enforcement. And that's going to be a whole different game. Because we're going to be reviewing really quick what exactly do we consider illegal, what exactly do we consider criminal behavior, so on and so forth. Because the damage it will do to the greater economy as well as all of the individuals involved, including a lot of legal officials and their relatives, it's a bit more costly than a lot of people would like to contemplate. And I mean, I'm not even worried about myself because I do not involve myself in markets and whatnot where this is a really significant risk to me. But such markets do exist, and I do promote their existence. I think that it is necessary for us to remain free and have the capability of being wholly free. But at the same time, the kinds of standards that you'd be able to develop with regard to that Taintchain business, again, that is an all-consuming net. That is going to catch everybody. Everybody. And so, again, do you really want to push that standard? Because you're going to find out that there are no secrets, and all of the ill-gotten gains that you've been bouncing around, they do come with some sort of how should I say this, recompense, and you might not be actually liquid capable of dealing with it without having to go to jail. But yeah, so here we go with ASRock again. I think that that's going to add another piece to the table here as far as who is producing mining hardware and who is benefiting the most from doing so. And I think that AMD and NVIDIA are going to be kicking themselves a lot for downplaying their interest in the mining sector with regard to how much they're making on it and how much of their annual profits are actually from miners. They've done a lot of things to hide it because I don't know, I guess there's some sort of face involved or something like that. But there's a lot of fucking miners buying a lot of motherfucking video cards. I know because I'm still listening to fucking gamers bitch about it. And that being the case, it doesn't really help them when they're saying, oh, it really doesn't mean all that much as far as our annual income goes. It's bullshit. Blowing smoke up my ass. Why would you bother dedicating some production capacity in your manufacturing fabs? Why would you bother dedicating that to making headless cards specifically for the process of mining cryptocurrencies if in fact your earnings from selling cards to cryptocurrency miners did not represent a significant amount of your annual income? I mean, I was in manufacturing. I understand how all this works. You don't make it if there isn't a demand for it. And if there's enough demand for it that you're dedicating specific manufacturing lines to the production of devices specifically to address that demand, that's a significant demand. And talking it down, again, is not doing you any favors. All it's doing is making people look around for other miners because apparently you don't take it all that seriously. It's like, oh, big whoop-de-doo. It was only 20% of our last quarter's income. We could have survived without that. Then, if we lose it to AssRock or some other vendor, no big whoop-de-doo, right? Give me a fucking break. When you project the future potential of cryptocurrencies as far as their use, I can guarantee you that regardless of whatever regulatory regimes are brought to bear on us tomorrow, by then, there will be a great number more people using them. There will be more people mining them. And if you want to make those miners using your hardware as opposed to somebody else's hardware, you need to be taking this shit very, very seriously. And, like I said, downplaying it in your quarterly reports or in your announcements or in your speeches, it's not doing you any favors at this point. Like I said, it might have been saving you with some face with your peers, a year or two ago. Might have saved you a little face with your government a year or two ago. But it is not going to next year, and probably not even this year. By the end of this year, those same people are going to be looking at you going, dude, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you putting more of your production capacity to this? Why aren't you making your cards cheaper so you can be more competitive against your other competitors? What's wrong with you? Come on now. Get with it. Because by then they'll be buying cryptocurrencies and they'll be trading cryptocurrencies. Again, the run of interest on this is not like social media or, not like MySpace or Facebook or any of those that have come and gone. Those did not give us money for our participation. They just gave us really neat web pages to look at and write text on. They didn't give us any monetary reward for participation, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies do. Anyway, enough of that. I got a couple other little articles here that I think I can stuff at least one more in. And I'm trying to decide which one. I got this one about Verge, and we don't read enough articles about Verge on this show. But this one is on Forbes.com, of all places. Mysterious, world-changing deal makes Verge the new sexy crypto. And this is by Kenneth Raposa. And so, yes, clearly, penis. Verge is on the verge of something. Nobody knows. But whatever it is, it has the cryptocurrency gamblers throwing money at what has now become a billion-dollar company. Verge XVG coin rose 66% on Tuesday, the biggest mover of the top 50 traded cryptocurrencies. It all started with a message by one of its developers, nicknamed BridgeDev, posted on YouTube wearing a black baseball hat and a hoodie and speaking from what looks like someone's living room. Bridge jokingly thanked investors for the millions of dollars, adding, quote, I packed my bags and am moving to my own little island with the funds you have all donated. After that one-liner, the Verge developer talked about a, quote, partner. No one knows who this partner is. Some say it's Amazon. It's probably not. Others say GoDaddy. Verge is being quiet on it, but the coin has been moving higher on the news. Quote, we are going to announce the name of the partner on April 16th, and I think that's actually been amended to April 17th. I'm not entirely certain on that. Along with a global marketing campaign of the likes you have never seen before, he says. It's going to change crypto in a really good way. Verge is billed as the cryptocurrency for people who love privacy, though one would assume that is mostly the point of cryptocurrency. Verge describes itself as an improvement upon the original Bitcoin blockchain systems. The Verge coin, known by its ticker XVG, launched back in 2014 under the name Dogecoin Dark. It was rebranded in 2016. Verge is an open source software company with no real ownership. Development and marketing comes from the crypto community, many of which are just looking for a 5-cent cryptocurrency to hit $1. A year ago, XVG was worth less than a grain of sand. According to players in this market, the partnership that Verge is slated to announce later this month is, quote, all hype. But there are some variables to consider, including the partner being a relatively known global company with high-traffic websites in its portfolio. No doubts, Verge has a partner, but for how much, for how long, and how much cachet can they bring? Cachet they can bring to XVG is a mystery. Anton Zapolsky, CEO of crypto exchange Tradealize, says Verge raised less money than companies like Filecoin, which doesn't have a working product yet. Verge does. Quote, I think they provide pretty remarkable technological solutions through the Wraith protocol, he says. The Wraith protocol allows for users to switch between a public open blockchain and a private closed blockchain. If the Wraith protocol is turned on, for instance, the transaction data is hidden on the blockchain. Maybe this is the Swiss bank of blockchains. Or it's the fear of missing out that has driven this coin so high, so fast over the last few days. But since yesterday's meteoric rise, Verge is back to tracking every other digital currency and is in the gutter on Wednesday. Much of the success of Verge hangs on this April announcement. Not at all true. The rest hangs on their coders' ability to protect from hackers. Private blockchains and private cryptocurrencies may not be the ultimate draw. Quote, "It's easy to announce privacy solutions, but it's quite another to survive attacks and deliver on the promises of privacy," says Nolan Barrell, head of research at CoinDesk. Verge fell today on news that it was breached by hackers. Announcements are great for buzz. The Verge coin will only be worth something in the long run if their cryptographic system holds up, Barrell says. And actually, it wasn't that kind of failure. It was a 51% attack. Quote, "Any announcement today must be measured by the delivery of privacy promises over the years to come. Track record is important. XVG is just one of many coins promising to deliver on these issues. For media or event bookings related to Brazil, Russia, India, or whatever." So there you have it. A little snippet about Verge on, of all publications, Forbes. It's funny to me because it seems like that there's still people in the media that are viewing cryptocurrencies as something that can be defined as far as value is concerned by the same metrics that previous monetary units have been. And I think that's kind of a mistake. That what it's really going to come down to is and the guy did touch on this, is do they deliver? Do they deliver on their promises? Does the coin do what they say it's going to do? Or what it claims to do? Does it do it cheaper than other options? Does it do it faster than other options? These are the values that are going to be defining it, and people are going to be choosing this on an individual level, not necessarily making the most educated choice every single time, but certainly edging towards that with each exposure they have to cryptocurrencies. And this is an evolving thing. I expect that the user will continue to evolve along with the cryptocurrencies and the communities built around them. But by no means do I consider any of this over or set in stone or anything like that. We keep seeing forks of Bitcoin. I think that's just silly. Most of them can't really define themselves as usable outside of Bitcoin. Although I will say Bitcoin Cash is kind of an exception there, where they've given us an opportunity to see exactly how Bitcoin would scale on chain. And honestly, I think that's going to be the option that ends up showing us the better way out over the longer term. That we're going to see that the sacrifice to third-party arbiters of our transactions is not really going to be all that worth it. I talked to somebody today, or it was either today or yesterday or recently about this, and they seem to be under the impression that the transactions never have to touch down to the Bitcoin blockchain. I'm sorry, for the transactions to be considered, I would say, valid by Bitcoin standards, yes, eventually they do have to settle to the Bitcoin blockchain. So I don't know where this person got that information, but there's a lot of misinformation in crypto, and there's going to continue to be. It's a revolutionary industry because it is reintroducing the concept of public created currencies in the digital age. Previously this existed with company-based coins, and when I say that, I'm talking about a century or so ago, where companies issued their own script, had their own store, and you would work for, an agreed upon rate with your employer. They would issue you a script at that rate, and then you would be able to spend the coin, or the script rather, at the store. Well, we're taking that same concept, we're making the store the planet, and anybody can issue coins. So now it's not a system where you can be coerced or you can lose a great deal of the face value of your script because your employer is debasing it or not actually giving you a favorable rate of exchange or a consistent rate of exchange. They're just as subject to the market as you are, and I'm sure they played the fudge, and it made it to where those were less favorable means of being paid than national currencies. And that kind of brought us to where we are with regard to having the Federal Reserve issuing our currency and all that business. But with cryptocurrencies, we have a higher standard of accountability. And this taint coin idea, or taintchain rather, idea, while promising, again, I think ultimately it will promise to provide just as many liabilities for people as it will advantages. And I think that's the point that keeps a lot of legislators at bay with regard to cryptocurrencies, is their own involvement would be completely open and exposed by this taint mechanism, whether it be their direct involvement or the involvement of proxies on their behalf. And malicious activities executed on their behalf would also be wholly apparent. And a lot of the fuckery that we've experienced in the last probably 3 or 4 years on the Bitcoin network would also be readily traceable. So, again, good thing, bad thing. A lot of the people that thought they were being sneaky and getting away with something and going to make the Bitcoin network do what we want it to do, and if we start using that Taintchain business as a means of pursuing redress and accumulating evidence and investigations to those ends, these people could be considered liable for the conditions that their actions created on the Bitcoin network. And it puts a whole new face on the idea of forks as well. I mean, you have to think these a little bit further through, I think. Anyway, it is with that I want to close out this episode. It has certainly been a pleasure. I certainly enjoy the support. As usual, you'll be able to find me on my Twitter page or in the Verge Currency IRC chat room, which I currently don't have open, but I am in the Verge Currency Telegram, so you can find me there, and also in the Discord, occasionally in Discord. But we will be back again Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so until then, I want y'all to trade safe, do your homework, and watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you, not even on the Taintchain. Thank you very, very much for listening, and you all have an excellent evening. As far as the last dance is concerned, let's go ahead and throw it down. Anthrax, Antisocial, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent week.